Mickey Hart here, you're listening to the GAA Hour Football Show.
The GAA Hour with Colm Parkinson is brought to you by Paddy Power, home of the Money Back Special.
I'm not finished yet, it took me a long time to get here.
Both players have spoken with each other and they regret what happened. They've had a frank discussion with each other, and they're both of them are keen to now focus on getting back their county jerseys.
That these fellas will get such a shell shock next Saturday evening that we'll put them back in their asses for 10 years.
So we're into club month for April, lads, and we're not finished with the inter-county season yet. We've got the big one on Saturday, Westmead and Laois. Pretty big rivals, I would suggest, all stemming from 95 when they beat us after 2 replays in a minor final over in Tullamore. So we were kind of thinking that this final would be in Tullamore. It's in Croke Park. It's Laois's 5th time in Croke Park in the last 2 years since John Sugrue took over. John Sugrue, I'll get to that in a little while.
I've
been pulled up. A Kerry fan has pulled me up on Twitter about this. He said this is from Brian Murphy. He said ahead of Division 3 final preview, you are politely reminded that the Laois football manager is John Sugrue, not John Sugrue, like I would always call him, Sugrue. So that's it. It's a unique name. I wasn't.
John Sugrue himself never corrected you
Sugrue.
on it either.
I don't think I ever call him John Sugrue. I call him John.
Mr. Sugrue.
So
I can't get on board with Kerry.
Connor and Conan are in studio here with me, I should have said.
Yeah, Welsh, Kane, Sugrue. I just can't.
There's a lot, yeah. There's a lot. And listen, if Brian obviously doesn't listen to the club podcast from September to December and hear my pronunciation of all the clubs around Ireland, then he might give me a little bit of a break. This is a clear issue with me. But anyways, I have the 2 boys back. I had neither of you on Monday, lads, and this is just fairy tale stuff. Derry Division 4 champions Mayo, the green and red of Mayo comes blaring on in Croke Park. Were you emotional, Connor?
I was. It's been a kind of a theme since Sunday that people are admitting that it meant a lot more to them than we initially thought it would. I mean, James Horn was making all the right noises before the game. He's like, well, this is, I think I heard Dermot O'Connor say, this is game 8. They were looking at it as game 8. It wasn't the final, it was just another game. And there was an element of that approach. He didn't want to seem to get carried away with the league. And it wasn't just the kind of the emotion of winning a national title. It was the game itself, which was ridiculous. Like the second half was just like I was nearly having a heart attack watch it. And then when we won the game, like I don't mind admitting that it was amazing. Got a little bit carried away. It was a little bit emotional, and just to see, to be honest, the main thing was seeing a lot of lads that have been there for a long time. Andy Moore and Keith Higgins, Jason Doherty, Aidan O'Shea, some of the boys that have lost so many finals there, and just to see them happy and see them, it's nearly like they didn't know what to do after a big final, and like they're used to be kind of sitting down and getting pats on the back from the opposition. They're kind of looking around and it's okay to celebrate, and it was okay for us to like. National titles are a big deal, and Mayo have lost 10 national finals in Croke Park in the last 17 years since we won the last one. So I don't think there was a big deal. I don't think many people were saying, oh, Mayo shouldn't be getting carried away, it's only the league. But I think they were dead right to celebrate as they did, and I know like down in Mayo certainly celebrated as heartily as it was in Croke Park too. So
absolutely, it was the song coming on Croke Park and looking down on the field and seeing Aidan O'Shea, Andy Moore, and all that vintage hugging each other, Vaughan, Keegan, all these lads. I was a neutral, and to be honest, I didn't think much of it until that actually happened as well, and then I was like, geez, this is a big deal for them.
Yeah, and probably though devalued a bit because of seeing Dublin winning it so often, and they're probably going to win the All-Ireland, so Dublin are trying to sort of give it a bit of respect and they're running around, but it looks like it's forced a little bit for them.
And maybe Cork dominated before that, so we haven't really had first time in a long time winners of the league.
And
Kerry would have celebrated in 15.
We're talking about national titles. There only is 2 national titles in the league. We say it's an amazing competition. It is, so it's a big deal to win, and Derry won it in 2008. That is our best memory as Derry supporters, in Parnell Park. It is like almost the pinnacle, but it's a national title.
So how did you feel when Chrissy McCaig lifted that cup? You were in Croke Park.
To be honest,
we were talking about that on Monday. He looked a little bit kind of half embarrassed about Division 4.
Yeah, and not to sound like snobby, because we're Derry, we can't sound snobby, but I do remember coming to full time, and I was keeping an eye on the management team, because I almost didn't want them to celebrate too hard, because I was like, we're here because you got us here in the first place. Like, this is just rectifying it and getting us back out. So I didn't want to see any big celebrations, but not to take away from it, but it shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think they did celebrate overly, Derry. That's a bit of a weird one when a bigger team goes to Division 4 and wins it. I still think you should celebrate it. Like, you still win something.
Yeah.
Leitrim obviously would have celebrated mad. Andy Moran had a great quote after the final. I missed this on Monday. He's talking about his daughter and having her out on the field after the game, and he was like, I suppose when she was born it was a dream to put her into the cup and get the picture, but she's too big now. So like, he'd lost too many, and now the poor girl has missed the boat.
She's there at 16 and goes into Sam Maguire.
Yeah, and that's it's a pretty big cup as well, that League Cup, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although it's a bit deeper than Sam. She'd still fit into Sam, I'd say, probably, you'd imagine. So that was it. That was his 11th final, obviously, Andy Moran. So he was talking about maybe not going back this year. Only James Horan gave him the call, and then he kind of had to go back in. But he said that, interestingly, he said he has to adjust his training from what I used to do in terms of going 5 days a week. That doesn't happen anymore because work is too busy and life is too busy. I was surprised by that, because it was kind of like thinking, no matter what age you are you back in or are you not? Do you know, that kind of way? Whereas I could understand him maybe tailoring the training, but I would imagine you have to be there every night that the other players are there. So that was a bit of a surprise that maybe he's not actually going every night. That's a bit like me with the intermediates.
You'll be down to one night a week soon.
And then complaining when you're not playing them.
Yeah.
I wasn't as surprised when Andy came back, as opposed to, there's a conversation every year with Mayo players, who's going to come, who's going to retire and who's going to come back. And I wasn't really surprised with Andy. Andy runs his own gym in Castlebar, and the gym is across the road from McHale Park.
Right.
So for logistics
you're
alone,
running out of excuses there, Andy. Immediately this sounds a little bit suspect.
Not to be putting you in a bind there, Andy, but for that reason, and because he's always and I suppose the thing that you forget about Andy Moran is Andy Moran had 2 really serious injuries towards I'd say around the time he was turning 30. So I'd say more with Andy than the rest of them. Say like Alan Dillon, who went, say, relatively injury free for a lot of his career, thought he might want to extend it a bit more because he missed out on so much football. But he's had to adjust his training, and by the looks of it, we'll see how the championship goes. It might have to adjust to a new role as well in terms of making an impact off the bench potentially, as opposed to being the guaranteed starter.
Yeah, well, we think that is going to be the case now potentially. And Kieran Shannon had a good piece where he gave the podcast here a mention, called Stevie out on his lazy punditry, which we'll have to put up to Stevie the next day. But he's talking about a potential bench for Mayo being Andy Moran, Colin Boyle, Seamus O'Shea, and I was thinking, I think Mayo should do that. You look at the lift Dublin are always getting with their bench, and Mayo, no disrespect, they're bringing on Evan O'Regan and they don't get any lift in actual fact. And the Mayo fans are so crazy. When Colin Boyle came on the last day, I don't think it should be underestimated what a lift that gives, and it gives the supporters a lift, and the whole thing goes, we're now getting stronger rather than and Dublin are getting stronger. There's a whole psychology there, and I think Mayo absolutely should be keeping some of those big names. And the fact that they found Ruan, they found Fionn McDonough, Michael Plunkett, James Carr, all look like options. I'd be starting with those fellas, and I'd be holding the other fellas in reserve, because you've getting 20 minutes out of these lads. 20 minutes is 1/3 of the bloody game.
I think so. When you look at the big games that Mayo have lost in the last few years as well, it has been probably in the last 20 minutes that we've lost them as well, especially against Dublin. When Dublin are bringing on these fellas, they're bringing on Paul Flynn, they're bringing on Kevin McManaman, they're bringing on Bernard Brogan,
the older legends.
Whereas
which is,
we're tend to bringing on utility players and then kind of actually swapping positions around to kind of integrate them into the team at that time.
You lose a bit of quality as well just to get fresh legs. You're not bringing on players as good.
That's it.
With Mayo.
There's a kind of mantra that's done the rounds. You'd finish with your strongest team as
I don't like that. But
I get it to a certain degree. But when you mention it for in this case with Mayo, I think there's a case to be made for it, as opposed to maybe a bigger squad like Dublin, whereas you start your best players, that kind of way, and you have enough quality to bring on anyway.
Yeah.
But I think I tend to agree, and especially the way the last rounds of the league went, because James Horan seemed to do that. He had been starting Andy Moran, he had been starting Colin Boyle, he had been starting some of the established lads, and then at the end, after the dip against Dublin, dip against Galway, made a bit of a change, and those lads have come in. Andy's made an impact against Kerry, and twice actually. And Colin Boyle came on, and he did quite well when he came in against Kerry the last day. So I'd say that's going back to James Horan said start of the year that for 50-50 calls to be made between young players and established players, who's likely to go with the younger players. So I think that's what you will see come championship.
Yeah, no, I agree. Quickly to move off Mayo. So you're really basking in this. This isn't really Mayo. This is just an interesting thing, I thought. So Jason Doherty was doing media yesterday. A pity I couldn't go talk to him. I must at some stage this year. But he's talking about the freeze. He's talking about Cillian O'Connor coming back. Now, for me, Cillian O'Connor goes straight back onto the freeze, even though Cillian O'Connor isn't at the Dean Rock levels of this is going over. But Jason Doherty is not at the Cillian O'Connor level for me. Now, he thinks his stats, he says he was asked about whether Cillian will be back on the freeze when he comes back, and he says, God knows. After missing that one in the first half, he'll be licking his lips. We haven't discussed that, to be honest. He'll be back hopefully in the next few weeks, and maybe with the club, even back in training with us. I think he's actually playing a league match this weekend, Cillian O'Connor is. So he says, we'll see once we get back in the thick of training before New York. We'll have to have a chat over coffee and see who's going to take them. We have to see who's playing first of all, which is fair enough. And I was just amazed that the two players will decide this themselves. I would imagine James Horan surely makes that call. Like, I mean, how is Cillian? Both of them surely want to take them. How are you going to come to an agreement? Do you need a third party in there to actually have a...
Yeah, like, well, that coffee's going to be the worst one ever.
Yeah, there could be 10 coffees later. No way, will you miss that one against Dublin in the replay? Like, I mean, forget about that. You can't do it when it counts. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Like, this could be taken a bit out of context, because it doesn't make... James Horan makes that call, full stop.
I think so, yeah. The manager should be making the call, and I think the free taker should be a bit separated almost. Remember Bernard Brugans to hit them for Dublin, and it had a pressure on him, because now you're more than just a boy.
And he wasn't a guarantee either.
Exactly.
He was liable to put one in the goalie's hands, and
he was supposed to be the one winning ball and taking men on and stuff as well, and winning the freeze and then having to hit them. Like, I think the free taker in an ideal world should almost be separated from that, whereas Jason Doherty's running up and down the pitch, he's getting pulled and dragged, winning dirty
That's a
ball.
good point. His role does not lend itself to... He's too high octane, and his legs could be completely dead for a free. That's a good point.
I'd love to have heard the context, because during the league, like if it was for a left-footed kicker, Kevin McLaughlin took a few towards the end. Fionn McDonough took some too. So
they're both dodgy. Mayo are blessed with great free takers, are they?
But I think if Cillian O'Connor was playing throughout the league, he would have taken some of those ones, even on the side that would have favoured the left footer. As I said, I would have loved to have heard the context, because to me, Cillian O'Connor comes back in and Cillian O'Connor goes straight back on the freeze. He's not as consistent as he used to be, but he used to be ridiculously consistent. His level has dropped a little bit. He's not Dean Rock now, but he's still one of the best around. So I'd say there was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek from Jason Doherty. Not sure, because I wasn't there for the conversation.
Yeah, he could have had a smirk on his face when he's saying this. So maybe I read too much into it. I was like, Jesus Christ, there's no... What is this all about? Cork Club vote. So the Cork County Board voted on these proposals. We talked about these, was it last Thursday or the Thursday before? I think it was last Thursday. And the option C, which I favoured, and it seemed like a happy balance between the inter-county players getting the same amount of games as the other two options. The only difference with option C is that club players get an extra 2 games. So from us talking about a podcast, we could only see positives. No less games for county players, but 2 extra games for club players. Of course, there was all people losing their minds. It's been voted down. So the proposal to play some Cork County games without county players has been defeated. The proposal that was presented at a meeting last week received 52 votes. It was the second highest of the 3 proposals. So 52 is not many. I think the other one was well over 100 votes. It was rejected, opting for the 3-group 4-team format to operate for 2020 onwards. So the one that won was A, which was for teams to play 1 game in April and then 2 in August. The worst one of all. Like, the option B was to just play league in April and then play your championship, run it off in August. I hate the option A, and players hate it. Players hate having to peak for a championship match in April and then go away and then have it pre-season and start it all over again. It's the most bizarre like yearly structure I could possibly think of, and that's the one that got through.
Option A is Mayo as well, actually.
Option A is Mayo, it is.
Since last year, yeah.
You know that, Conor, from playing it. How can you, like, you're preparing now for championship, right?
Yeah, week after next, yeah.
Right, and then after it, what did you do last year?
well, we had a few league games immediately afterwards, and then there was a break for I'd say the guts of 2 months, like from league and.
So you would have started back doing pre-season then before August, would you?
You have to do a different. Yeah, you have to start preparing.
Terrible,
again,
isn't it?
Yeah, and at least we had won our first championship game. It's really different if you lose, because your entire season is hanging on that second game, and there's nearly a 4-month gap between the first and the second, so any sort of momentum between winning a championship game, you lose it completely.
Right, okay, it's bizarre. So there was obviously criticism at the county board meeting, which didn't surprise me. There was delegates saying that club delegates saying that inter-county players might choose to play for their clubs instead of Cork. That's always a risk. Like, players have that option every single year, and I don't see it ever changing. Players want to play county, and if they did, what's wrong with it? Won't your club championship be an awful lot stronger the following year? If you have a good inter-county manager, players will commit to your county. That's my opinion of it. I think that's a complete another red herring. Then they were saying the weakening of teams by having to play without county players, and the promotion of players from lower grades. Now, this was one that I was kind of half thinking was a decent one, in that there's people trying to argue that if you don't have 5 county players, right, then you might have to promote intermediate players to senior, and your intermediate team will suffer on the basis of that. Now, most senior panels would have 25 or 20 on it. So your first 5 subs are not intermediate players. You'd imagine the intermediate players will move up to sit on the bench, while the 5 that are ahead of them on the senior panel will, you know what I mean? Will they be the ones coming on? But again, there's always angles to complain about these kind of things. Another one was the 26 players on a Cork matchday panel prevented from playing with their clubs, and only 20 allowed to be used during a game. 6 players will be left in limbo, not playing with their county and not allowed to play with their clubs. Well, that's exactly what they have now. Yeah. So I don't see how that makes any difference whatsoever. Like, I mean, this summer under option A, they're in limbo as well. Yeah. So how's that an argument against another proposal?
And they'd be in limbo for the 2 extra games that option C was providing. Like, you know, options A and B, you have 3 group games. With option C, they created 2 extra games, so like you have 5 group games, and that's where the 2 county players would be missing, or the county players would be missing for the 2 games. So it wasn't like you're directly missing a first round of the championship to play with your county. It was just, here's 2 extra games that don't mean as much, because now the other ones are worth more. Yeah. And like, to be honest, when I saw the reaction and I saw it spread, I was like, Jesus, is this what I sound like when I see these proposals?
Yeah, well, look, sometimes, well, listen, I've always said I'm always on the side of let's try it and see what it's like. Like, if it's obviously there's some silly ideas. I didn't think this was a silly idea. I thought it was a good one, but you have the usual naysayers coming out and trying to shut everything down before it's even tried. Like, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of the rule changes have worked, and the naysayers are very quiet. Conan being one of them. No, he was pro. I'm slagging Conan. I know you're going to come back.
Hang on a second.
Conan was only against the hand pass passionately. Wexford training camp. So Wexford hurlers, lads, don't get scared. This is a general talking point. Wexford hurlers are jetting off to Portugal for a training camp at the end of this month. So they were one of the counties, and Laois were one of them. And Laois obviously were punished this year by a home game taken off them and playing in Croke Park. It didn't stop them making the final, thankfully. But Wexford were one of the teams that were punished. But they're going away this year again anyways, because it has changed that if you want a training camp now, you can write to Croke Park for permission for it. So Wexford obviously have their house in order. Davy's been very accommodating to the clubs, so they're running off and off clubs, and then he's asked permission probably at the end of April. Look, it's very close to our championship, can we go then? And permission is being granted on a case by case basis, and I think that's probably the smartest way of doing it. You know, punishing teams to get away together for a collective training camp 2 weeks before a championship just seems completely bizarre.
Yeah, and isn't this, I think this is the 3rd year in a row that Wexford are doing this. I think they did it in 2017 as well, but last year I think Lee Chin said that we did not train out there. And I was like, we did not train once out there. Like, genuinely, you went to Portugal, you didn't train once. I was kind of wasn't so sure about that, because I think there was 4 counties investigated. I think they were one of them. But what I was reading there was that Armagh basically were one of them, but nearly admitted to the fact, we did the training camp, held their hands up, and they got done. Whereas Lee Chin says something like that, and Wexford got away with it. So I think they've tightened the kind of rules around it this year. But it's just so awkward with, inter-county championship being so soon at the beginning of May, and then having to try and factor in, April for clubs month as well. So it's glad that they kind of like close off some of the loopholes that sounded a bit ridiculous.
It did. Sure, it was just John Sugrue wrote them the open letter. So John Sugrue admitted to it as well and received a punishment, and he draw attention to Dublin, obviously, who went on a historical tour to France, and they got off it. So this has definitely fixed that kind of nonsense, because that was comical, and Sugrue. Shukru. That was a brilliant open letter. So Lee Chin was talking in the media just on the back of this, and he's talking about April for clubs, and he's saying, I know April is for clubs and I do agree with it, but it's very hard for a manager just to let you go for 4 or 5 weeks and not be together at all. I can understand why managers are frustrated with it, and sometimes players can get a bit frustrated, because if I'm not with the lads for a week, it feels like you haven't seen them in ages. No, but I thought that was nice. And then it's only a week, but if you're waiting for 4 or 5 weeks, it just seems like another year, and you're starting another year. And I completely agree with that. And these lads are in such a routine, and the WhatsApp groups, I'd say the inter-county WhatsApp groups never stop, and you become completely consumed by it. Then a week away from the lads, immediately you're starting to miss them. Then 4 weeks and it's like, geez, we're starting all over again. And so this thing not only does it mess up clubs starting all over again, it's like 2 seasons for inter-county players as well. So this needs to change, basically. Do not talk about championship structures.
No, I was going to say, would a proper or a good county and it's well run, would they not just still train together, but then let them play their?
I think they are, but I think Davies doing some of them do. I think it's all different. Some of them are being very strict on training with the county team, but just playing league games. Other managers are saying, go back, give your club. It depends on his philosophy and how important clubs are. You're allowed to train, I think. I think that's
that's the best. I know Dublin had a rare weekend off there, and they were all playing league there at the weekend, and now they have 2 championship games coming up, but they're still training with Dublin. But
you're real for club championship though. Surely you're exclusive to your club that week. It's championship.
Oh, you think so? Yeah. James Warren said after the Mayo game on Sunday, they only have 6 training sessions between Sunday and New York, which is over a month away.
I would believe that, because Mayo have championships. See, this is different. I would be surprised Dublin don't go exclusive with clubs for championship. Laois train with Laois and play the league games, but Laois don't play championship in April. They used to, and they realised that club players don't like it. They want to get a good run of it in August, and they train with Laois a little bit more during, and which is fine. But if there was championship in Laois, I'd be very surprised if they were off training with Laois the week of a championship game. How do clubs get any prep in? What are you doing? We don't have anyone. You have young Smith on the panel.
Yeah, but he would train with us. But then
training with
so
both.
Many training sessions now as well. You probably can do both. Now I'm not aware of what Brian Fenton's doing, for example, but I do assume that he's probably down on the Thursday night if they're working on kickouts.
Find out if you can, because we could really do with that information. So 2 or 3 other ones. I'd say Jack Cooney, right, is the new Westmead manager, and I've been in contact with him. I've been trying to get him on the show a couple of times, and it's just his schedule and stuff. He wants to come on, but he had 2 he had 2 quotes here, and I have this down that he sounded like David Brady, right? So Jack Cooney's doing a great job at Westmead, it has to be pointed out. They won the O'Byrne Cup, which everyone forgets about, beat Dublin, and now they're promoted out of Division 3 and they're in the league final against Laois, and that's a real 50-50 game that we'll talk about in part 3. But he talked about stuff that goes into performances, and he says a lot of things go into performance, but the best way to measure performance is the score at the end of the game. Come on, Jack, that's David Brady punditry. We can't be listening to that kind of stuff. And then he talks on about consistency and talks about other stuff, and then at the end he says, there's never a bad day in Croke Park, irrespective of results. When you're togging out in Croke Park, it's a good day. And he should ring any of the Mayo players or ring Connor.
I'll tell you a thing or two, Jack.
So there's a couple of weird comments from him. So I'd be interested to get Jack on the show to see, is he David Brady in disguise, or is maybe these quotes are taken out of context.
He mightn't come on now.
Yeah, I should talk to the Westmeath team that lost by 30 points to Dublin in the Leinster final a couple of years ago as well. That wasn't a great day.
Yeah, that wasn't a great day. But exactly. Any day though was a good day. Any day up until the match maybe, or up until the hammering, is a good day, because Laois took plenty of them down to the ears as well. Right. great offer in Tipperary. So this has to be pointed out because this is fantastic. We give out about county boards. So for €15, you get a pass for every club game this weekend. Isn't that a great idea? Now, I don't think the county board are going to lose too much. There might be a few diehards that go to 2. Very few will go to 3. But the offer is there, and I think it will encourage more people to buy one on the off chance. Sunday I might go on. You might not, but do you know what I mean? I think more people will go to the club games with the chance that they might go to another one and go to their own club. So they'll probably make more money off stuff, and if it improves attendances at all, if some of them do go to 2, you're doubling, you're adding extra to the other games. I think it's a great deal. I don't think the county board lose anything for it. I think supporters gain and the actual matches gain as well.
Yeah, I was just saying to the Connor how I love playing on a Friday, because then it frees up the Saturday and Sunday. Like playing championship on a Friday, because then you are free to go watch games. And I've gone to 4 matches, on a Sunday before. They do it really well in Derry, where it's split early afternoon and late afternoon. But yeah, no, I think it's a great deal. I've got nothing really to add on.
There's nothing to give out about, because that's true. If you're on a Friday, if your team is on the Friday night, you might be busy Saturday. You might go to the double header on Sunday. So who gains from that? The crowd at the game on Sunday. It's just good. And for the money, you weren't going to go to it maybe on Sunday anyway. So I don't see huge losses. I see a lot more gains.
Just to say, for Tip, they did it because when you mentioned the offer, I was like, Tipperary have done something like this before. And actually, look back, and last year they had a €20 match pass. It covered 17 championship games in all codes, like underage as well, over a weekend. And that was in advance. That was for the Tipperary hurling quarterfinals. So they're big games as well. So Tip obviously know what they're doing.
So it obviously works for them. So this is not unprecedented. So before we get into John Sugrue, who I interviewed last Saturday morning, TG Cahir have announced their schedule of they've 11 games across April, which keeps us in business, right? So we'll have Monday and Thursday shows. So I was only planning on doing Thursday shows, but sure, when there's club games, because Saturday, April the 13th, Na Fianna play St Sylvester's, and a big one is Kilmacud Crokes play Ballymun Kickham's. That's in Parnell Park, so that's on TG Cahir. So we'll be watching that and we'll be talking about it. And the next day then, Doon versus Patrick's Well. They love Limerick senior hurling. They have another big one between the Piershig and Patrick's Well on Sunday the 21st. That's a huge game. That's all the big names. You're looking at me panicked, so I'm not going to continue on anymore about it. But anyways, so TG Cahir have announced 11 games across April. What would we do only for them? There'd be no GAR. There'd be no GAR after September, or there'd be no GAR in April. Outside of us maybe trying to talk shit about nothing. There might be a bit of news, but listen, we need you, TG Cahir. Thank you very much.
I was looking out for Skerries on the list. It was pity I didn't see it.
I would love it, yeah. Oh yeah,
we'll get there.
Skerries v Lucan Sarsfield.
Someday, have either of you played live on telly?
No.
We were hoping we were going to be. Our game against Na Fianna last year was all or nothing. Whoever won was through to the quarter final. And we thought we were.
Does Mayo GAA TV count as live TV?
No.
Okay, well they'll never know.
Terrestrial TV.
Does it change the way you play? Are you aware?
There'd be an added excitement in training, and you, regardless. I don't know if players tell the truth or not, but we would be talking about it in training. Jesus, great, it's on the telly. Yeah. You would be, and you'd be in your head. But a little bit of extra pressure, definitely, but a huge excitement.
But there are players that played better in TV matches than didn't run of them.
No, I don't think so, because at the end, if it's a TV match, it's a big match anyway.
Yeah, of course.
It's an added spice, and it makes you more excited about it, But there's still enough pressure from the game. I don't think we're at we don't play in front of TV enough to know this lad's performing better, or it's in your home stadium rather than away in the Premier League, isn't it? He scores at home, but he can't score on the road.
But are you aware? After a piece of play, and you might know the camera's on you. Are you doing something that they look bigger?
Well, there has been accusations that when we were minors, you're only a young fella, you'd be slagging. So the big thing when we were minors was you would notice yourself appear on the big screen in Colm Park. So what I used to do, right, I just it's mad that you'd even be thinking about this in a match. So there might be an injury and the play would be stopped and the camera would be an injury. I'd be over beside the injury and I'd have a look up at the television.
Oh, shameless.
Oh yeah,
absolutely,
but then
shameless.
You're only a young fella, I mean, it was a big thing. So that was the only way of guaranteeing that here I'm on it now.
You had to show off the championship haircut as well. Jesus.
All right, I'm saying too much here. We'll move on and we'll talk to John
It's a beautiful sunny Saturday morning, John, and you had a Division 3 final to look forward to. Where else would you rather be outside of maybe Kerry manager in the same position?
No, I'm happy where I am. Look, I want you. It's great, and like you look around the place here in Unmore Park, and there's a lot of development has gone on, and it's great to see just the facilities that are here now. But saying that it is Division 3 final, we're fully cognitive of where we are in the pecking order in the country as well, and by the end of business this evening we'll be in second place in Division 3 heading into final, so we'll keep an eye on what we need to do to try and get competitive in that final.
Yeah, but like you said, we're in the centre of excellence here, and we're actually looking out across Unmore Park. This day 2 years ago we were in Division 4. There was no centre of excellence. The point I'm making, Laois football is in a much better position now than it was when you arrived.
Yeah, well, look, I want you. We've got a little bit of forward momentum going, but on that as well, I think if you look at our league campaign today, we had good momentum from the first game of this league, and then we're sitting on our backsides after game 2 again. Yeah. So it's been a little bit topsy-turvy, throughout this year, but hopefully if we can gather ourselves rightly now and put a little bit of a forward lean into next weekend, we'll see where we're at.
What was it that attracted you about the Laois job? Because from the outside, right, we're in Division 4, there was a lot of doom and gloom, like I said. The minors from 03 that backboned the squad were pushing on in years. We hadn't won minor in a long time, performed at underage level. But you've managed to turn things around and introduce a lot of new players that maybe people from the outside didn't even think were there.
Yeah, look, I suppose it was the mileage that attracted me to it. I live about 4 miles out the road, so I know. Look,
but it wasn't an attractive job when you took it over.
No. I wouldn't look at it that way. You've got to look at a team and see what way a team's momentum is going. Then, it makes no difference where you start from. It's all about trying to get a team moving forward. And within Laois, I live up here now. I'm living here with 9 years. And I've been to lots of the club games, and I've got involved with the team through various guises through the last number of years. And I've just seen the way the team have gone. And then, there's a bit more potential in them, and it's just a matter of just trying to get stuck in and see if you can get a bit more out of them.
Yeah, I was reading Colm Begley talking on the All-Stars tour about competition for places, and Kieran Lillis was mentioning it, and Mark Timmins this morning. That's the big thing, isn't it? There was established players in a comfort zone. Colm Begley actually even said that a bad game wouldn't see you dropped, and that's a malaise that sets in, isn't it?
Well, it is, and there has to be a little bit of an element of savagery of training, that you have to hold on to your jersey, and young fellas are going to come in, and then if young fellas get a jersey too handy, it's no good for them either, and then if old fellas hold on to their jersey too handy, it's no good for them either. So yes, competition is very important, and last weekend we absorbed a number of injuries and we pushed on reasonably, so we have to try and keep that tempo here, and try and keep the competition within the squad. If we do that, I think we'll be in a healthy place.
Yeah, you definitely wielded the axe after the Loud match. You used your full panel, so that message needs to go out as well, I suppose, so lads are on their toes.
Yeah, but in a productive sense, there's nothing personal about any of this stuff. There's nothing, we need to try and be productive, and as a team we need to try and find our best balance, and I think we're not there yet. Certainly not there yet. I think we've work to do yet. Throughout the league we've been mixed, the good, the bad and the ugly. So it's a matter of trying to be a little bit more consistent, and last day I think we got a little bit of consistency together, but that was a little bit, and it's once just swallow never makes a summer, so we've got to try and be a bit more consistent now and see if we can stick 2 performances together.
Yeah, could you enjoy the league a little bit more this year? There was huge pressure, we know, to get out of Division 4. Was it a little bit more enjoyable at a higher level and not that same massive pressure?
No. No, I know.
Can you enjoy it at all?
Look, last year, we had to get out of Division 4 last year. It really is one of those things, and you see it like Leitrim coming out of it this year, and they'll hopefully blossom next year for themselves. It's great to see them do that, and see Derry get back out of it. But saying that, this year, we have to be progressive, and to some degree we wanted to stay in Division 3. But I think as a group, if we're overly cautious and we start consolidating, I think it's not necessarily a good atmosphere for our guys. Then where's the push going to come in training? So you have to have that little bit of ambition about you too.
Yeah. Is it difficult to prepare for teams in the league because the games come so thick and fast? Westmeath had a new manager. You mightn't be 100% sure how they're setting up. Louth have a new manager. They're the two teams that beat Laois and will be playing in the final. We don't know yet who we're playing. But is it difficult to get on top of game plans? Because we know you like to change the style up depending on who you're playing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's a good bit of work attached to it. Attached to preparing a team nowadays, and I think it's one of those things that people maybe don't understand how much of your week you can take up. Looking at videos, so you look at your own video after a game, then you look at maybe 2 videos of the opposition. So that's 3 games you watch between whenever you finish your last league game before you play your next one. So. Yeah.
That's in the week, and you have to do the recovery, and then by the time you get around to see the opposition, it might be Thursday at that stage, would it?
Yeah, but you try and get stuff out to guys as early as you can, but it's one of those things. That's the way the GAA has gone. It's we're trying to prepare as best we can. We're trying to give guys as much information so that they can play to the best of their ability, and that's all we're trying to do: facilitate them to play to the best of their ability.
But is there time in the week as a manager though? I know there are big backroom teams, and you simply can't do everything yourself. But based on the high intensity league kind of schedule, should managers be full time to try and prepare a team fully?
I'm sure you should ask John Horn that anyway.
You'd be for the managers going full time.
You know what the boss's thoughts are on it, but it's 25 to 30 hours a week. I would say
it's a lot.
It takes between training and communication and looking at videos and preparing stuff. So, with 2 kids at home, and I've worked for myself. I'm self-employed, so it becomes busy. Yeah.
It's definitely. Evan O'Carroll has been flying it in the league. The offensive mark's really suiting him. The clip of the goal against Offaly was sensational. It was a real throwback to the Bomber Listons kind of time where you just get it in. You're lucky in that you have Donny and Evan who really kind of suit that style of football that you like.
Yeah, but there's lots of fellas facilitating that, and there's lots of fellas working hard to turn over ball and give us a defensive shape, and then in an attacking sense, I don't think Laois have ever really been overly shy. Laois like to play attacking football, so it's just a matter of trying to find a balance between defence and attack, and we'll try and shift the focus maybe around from different players on different days, because if you become one dimensional, that's not necessarily good for the team.
Yeah, that's the thing. But the kicking game is something that you like, and you that's what you usually coach. Do you see the game moving a little bit back towards that style of football, or what's your experience been in Division 3?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if you look across the divisions this year. I'm not sure how many hand passing dominated teams are doing much. If you look at the teams and you look at who's being progressive, you look at who's winning All Irelands, you look at teams who are being competitive in provinces. I'm not sure there's too many hand passing teams doing that well right now. So if you can't kick the ball, then maybe football's not for you.
Yeah, the trend seems to be moving away from teams dropping off and going back into zones. They seem to be even Tyrone beating Dublin that night in Croke Park. That managers see that, even though Laois did something similar the year before in the Leinster final.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it was inside the 45. It's now kind of moving to that middle third section, I think, which is great for the game. It's it makes the game an awful lot more attractive to watch, because then if you can move the ball through that middle third, there's less congestion at the back. So it's quite dynamic at the moment with regard to where teams put pressure on, and thankfully it's not necessarily all inside the 45, because inside the 45 is fine. It'll make you competitive to some degree, but at the end of the day, if you can be steady and have a formula to break it down, you will be beaten if you sit back inside her.
Well, that's the thing. We saw that against Carlow last year, where there was a lot of Laois playing on the outside of the screen and not giving away the contact. And I think, in a way, a lot of the teams have maybe figured that style out a little bit, and it's gone a little bit kind of out of date.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. It's going that way. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It depends on your view on football, and different people have different views. There's still a couple of other teams outside of Carlow trying it as well, and some are getting a little bit of success out of it, but only a little bit.
Yeah, only a little bit. Come here. Did you get a letter? Ever get a letter back from your letter to the GAA, the open letter that you wrote?
Yeah, I didn't know. I just let that out. That was generally what I wanted to clear up was our motivations behind doing what we did, and also the fact that we're big boys. We do something, we'll take the consequences. So, and we're big boys, we can do that. There's no problem with it. We took the consequences. We lost our game that was taken off us. That's life, But we've managed to dig ourselves out of that corner, and we've come back and we've recovered, and we've got ourselves into Division 2 next year. But I think if we're looking at the whole thing, and if we're looking at the image of the GAA, maybe ducking and diving around technicalities and things like that. Like if a fella strikes a fella strikes a fella. There's no point in sifting through the rule book to say
that's become a culture now, hasn't it?
Yeah, the apostrophe is
getting
here,
off it,
or the comma is there and it should be there, so technically he gets off. So it's like that culture is just not. I don't think it's a healthy culture for the GAA to promote or to allow to grow. And
it's nearly since 2004 for a Leinster final we played Westmead, and their midfielder got off on I think that's when the DRA started up, and he got back for the Leinster final that year, and they won it. And ever since that, everybody's been appealing, to the DRA and getting off, and now the culture has become that set in now.
Yeah. So, look, it is what it is, but thankfully we're in the league final, and thankfully it's in the month of April. And thankfully the Laois clubs won't be discommoded one bit by the fact that the league final can be put back into the first weekend in April.
Yeah, so it's changed this year, so you can actually go to Croke Park and ask permission now for the training camp, isn't that it? So at least something good came out of your letter.
I didn't know.
You didn't know that?
Yeah. But we don't need to go away this year. You see, this is the thing, right? Last year we had our championship game on the 12th of May. Club month finishes how many days there in April, 30 or 31 days, 30 days in April, right? So we would have had 11 days to prepare for our first championship game, which is our biggest game of the year. We were a county trying to find our feet last year. Any county giving them 11 days before their biggest game to gather as a group and have unity, I don't think it's fair. So either you push back the start of the championship, so you've got 2 weekends to prepare for a championship. Which I think is ample. That's fine.
Yeah.
Give you 2 weekends, then you can go do your training camp, and that's it.
Saturday, that's the thing. But it definitely doesn't make sense to not have your players for a full month before the most important game of the year, and then you can't even go away to get quality work done. Yeah. There's no logic to that.
Well, like the biggest competition of the year is the championship. I think there's no denying that, and that's where you really cut the mustard, really, because ultimately you play teams that are the same division as you, or a division above you, or maybe 2 divisions above you, and if you are, you've got to be right.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, Laois Westmeath. So you're training this morning before you know the opposition. You might have to get them in again tomorrow, then, will you? When you do know them, or
no? We've played both of them to date. To my mind, this morning is all about us getting ourselves, prepared. We want to give guys a chance before we start thinking game plans and things like that. We want to give guys a chance to really go at it with each other and be competitive with each other. So that's what this morning's all about.
Focus on your own. So it's a little bit frustrating that you don't know the opposition the Saturday before, I suppose.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like we'll have next week to prepare for the opposition. Today we've got to prepare ourselves, and guys have got to stick their hand up in training and see where we're at.
That's what it's all about. Well, listen, best of luck anyways, and we'll talk to you again.
Come on.
So this is the big one, lads. There's only one game we're going to preview because it's the only inter-county game. There is some club hurling in Cork and in Galway on TG Cahir this weekend, but we'll concentrate on the Laois Westmead game. So like I said, these are 2 pretty big rivals. It's a real 50-50 game, I see this one. There's some really good forwards on both sides. There's some, both solid in midfield, and you have some defenders which we'll talk about might match off against some of the forwards. But I just want to talk about, because we heard John Sugrue there, and the impact he's had on Laois lads should not be underestimated. We talked about his trial games and how he's improved the squad an awful lot. They were able to beat Carlow without John O'Loughlin, Colin Begley and Benny Carroll, who are 3 really important players. They have players just coming in and slotting into the system. They were relegated from Division 2 down to Division 3, 3 down to 4. They were top loaded with older, demotivated players that were badly underachieving. Laois hadn't won anything at minor under 21 since 2007. So on the face of it, this was not a job that many people wanted. Now, I was trying to paint a picture that it's still an attractive job. There's a year or 2 left. But Sugrue, in fairness to him, has kind of look towards the future rather than the short-term future. So, like, I mean, he's kept Colin Begley, and he's kept a few of those fellas from the 2003 minors. Brendan Quigley's back. We'll talk about him, but he's brought in a lot more young players, and they're all beefing up the panel. And now there's options all over the squad. There's competition from places which they're all talking about. Nobody's kind of comfortable on the team, and I think relatively, for a manager with no senior intercounty experience to come in and get the team straight back from 4-2, which didn't look easy, playing Croke Park 4 times, playing a Leinster final, and actually caused Dublin a few problems, even though they're way off Dublin. It's a massive job John Sugrue's done.
Yeah, in such a short space of time as well.
Yeah.
Like, and winning silverware along the way, and another chance for silverware 2 years in a row. Like, yeah, and we always, I felt like I was sort of drawn on it too much, that example in the Leinster final, because we've seen so many teams come up against Dublin and just get swatted aside playing silly football. And Laois was the one example that we saw. Here was a team actually set up well to try and beat them, and they executed it. Just they weren't good enough, like, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I've always been on the Sugrue bandwagon since then, but like. You probably have a better handle on it. Like, you were telling me that they weren't a Division 4 team. Are they above Division 3, or is he sort of playing above?
They're probably bottom half Division 2. I'd say
they could survive in Division 2.
It'd be a good season if we could survive in Division 2, I think. I think they could establish themselves. They have to keep everyone together. I'm hearing stories that Donny Kingston's, this might be his last year. You don't know exactly, but if they had everybody, you would say they could survive in Division 2. But Laois's tactics are very obvious. Laois have got Evan O'Carroll and they've got Donny Kingston, and Donny Kingston this year has been floating in and out. So he's been inside with Evan O'Carroll and he's been out centre forward. We saw the clip of him against Offaly giving in that huge ball into Evan O'Carroll. So when he goes out, he looks for Evan O'Carroll in there. Obviously it's almost like Donny knows the ball he wants, and he just gets it into him. Paul Cahalane was outstanding the last day. Now he's Portlaoise number 13, plays in the corner, but he's playing out in front of the two fellas against Carlos, so he's in a playmaking role. Scored nothing from play the last day, but got man of the match. So Laois's, obviously their system will be pretty much everybody else is all over the field, working, chasing players, because your half forward line, like we analysed Kerry on Monday, you can't actually trust your half forward line to stay in their positions. That's how Mayo messed Kerry's game plan up, by just dragging them everywhere they don't want to go. So you have to have a running game, and Laois have a running game, but they also have that kicking game to get it in. And I think that's the beauty of what John Sugrue has brought to Laois. I think it's a bit of flexibility. We want to get it in, but we're not obsessed with getting it. You know what I mean? We're not obsessed with getting it in. I think that's important.
That game will suit Croke Park as well, because I suppose what have you to go on, like against Westmeath the next day, only the game that they played kind of earlier on in the year, and I didn't see it, but just reading into it, a lot of the long ball in was spoiled. I think Laois scored 6 points in the first 15 minutes and then only scored 4 after that, because Westmeath had kind of cottoned on to the long ball in, had got a sweeper in front, so they batted it down and then just collected it then. So kind of if Laois were to persist with that, at the time it was a very strong breeze, obviously conditions were different, but with Croke Park will be a lot, it facilitates that sort of ball,
a bit more. I think Laois were taken by surprise by how defensive Westmead went that day. Now Westmead would have had their homework done on Laois, because Laois, they would have seen Laois last year. Laois would have struggled to do their homework on Westmead, because they would have had to see a Byrne Cup game, or they would have had to see them playing, and it was the 4th league game, and they obviously play at the same time. So I'd say Laois might have been a bit shocked. I wasn't shocked when I read that Jack Cooney was on Rory Gallagher's backroom team in 2015. Right? So, it's fairly obvious that Westmead maybe are playing a more defensive game, which makes probably sense against Laois anyways. But now that Laois have the heads up on it, Laois, it's not like Laois haven't played against Carlow loads of times and beaten them. Now that they've the heads up, they play a lot smarter against Westmead and Croke Park. They won't be forcing this kick. I think a lot more will go through Catalan, whose distribution is outstanding, and he might get the lads on better ball that might be cutting out the sweeper, and I'm sure Sugrue will have a much better plan for how Westmeath are set up than he might have had away in Cusack Park in Westmeath.
And that probably has been the most impressive thing with him, like as you mentioned, Carlo being able to adapt for that game twice, and then being able to play against Dublin the way you want to play, and then the Wexford game going into extra time. I remember you coming back to the office that Monday and absolutely buzzing, because you've had these sort of big moments as well with Laois going through. But I mean, the interesting thing is it's obviously harder to sort of impose your kicking game if a team are set up defensively. But
it is harder,
if you win the ball, if you can turn them over, then you can strike.
You can use the kick as a transition.
Yeah, that's a very good transition. And if Kingston's kicking the ball 60 yards, they haven't it's hard to stop. So it is going to be sort of how they set up defensively a bit as well, and then they can sort of use that to exploit.
So I quite like that, the fact that teams are actually getting it in now. See, my problem with these defensive games, they all started following the same pattern where it was carried and then you're outside a screen, and I was just bored out of my brains about this. But now their teams are trying to figure it out with transitioning, kicking it down, getting it down there before they retreat. I think there's a nice I look forward to that dynamic now of how Westmeath can stop these two in there. Whether that even suits Westmeath's forwards, because whatever good forwards Laois have, you can check them off with Jerry Egan, with John Heslin and with Kevin Martin, so they have match winners up there. Does that system suit their match winners as well? They'll probably leave two up and maybe everyone else is working. I haven't seen Westmeath, so I'm not too sure. I think tactically it's an interesting game, and it should, in Croke Park, you're right, it should be easier to maybe, like we saw in a lot of the games last weekend, it should be easier, get your long kicking game down and maybe catch out these teams that are trying to get players back.
And the funny thing is, those teams, what they want to do, we always talk about giving them oxygen. When they turn the ball over, that breathes energy into them. But it's when they turn it over on the 45, and that's when they get the big cheer and they get the break.
That's what I was just about to say. They're teams are prepared to lose the ball if they kick it in now. On a 50-50 chance, whatever. But it's far better to lose the ball in the full back line as opposed to get turned over when you're caught out of position, and give that team the oxygen to attack.
It's in actual fact, like we've said this and we've painted this out very clearly. It's low risk to kick it in. It's higher risk to be messing around it on a turnover on the 45. And like Keane said on Monday, it effing works.
Yeah, that's it. And you're also that idea when you're kicking it is that we all assume that you've lost it. You can still win it.
You're 50-50. Are you a gambler?
Exactly. So, and even if you do lose it, you're competing for the ball, so it's not like you've hand passed it to somebody who's cut it out and then ran
Yeah, so exactly. So I don't know, the Laois matchups, I think Garrett Dillon seems to be Laois's go-to man marker. He does all the difficult jobs. He marked Luke O'Loughlin the last day. Now, it was John Heslin's first game back. He might have surprised Laois. I'd imagine Garrett Dillon will pick him up. I'd say Stephen Atroyd, Laois captain, will mark Jerry Egan, and Mark Timmins, he's another one from the 03 minors. He's a stalwart at this stage. He was at the media day last Saturday morning and he was talking about playing with me. That'll tell you how old he Mark Timmins, Donny Kingston, Munnelly and a couple lads. There is still a connection of lads I've played with Laois, which is nice. I'm not that old yet, but I'd say he'll probably pick up Kevin Martin, and he's a real burly, top-notch inside forward. So it'll be interesting to see who Westmeath leave up. I'm not sure the likes of Luke O'Loughlin is a working type of player. He's an out-and-out forward. So whether Westmeath have the players, they might be drifting them back, but they might not be suited necessarily to turning over ball or doing too much work.
It sort of looked to me like in black and white that they're trying to keep 4 up.
Yeah, Westmeath, I'm looking at the Westmeath team that played the last day, and I don't see forwards that suit. You see Heslin, you see Egan, you see O'Loughlin, you see Martin, you see O'Toole and Ganood. They're not all working forwards that are going to suit getting back behind the ball. So I'm looking forward.
Unless
to
they're doing something with Kieran Martin. Hadn't Kieran Martin? I know he's worn 6 in his back and played 14 before, but unless they're doing
he's played in the defence too before.
Yeah,
so he could be dropping back, but then he's a huge weapon at full forward. I'd love if he dropped back.
Full forward. He's so dangerous.
I'd love if he went back. So it'd be interesting. There's lots of things. Interestingly, and I meant to give Cahalan and the performance of the weekend or a nomination last Monday, and Brendan Quigley. So Brendan Quigley is another 03 minor, got in on our senior team in 05 along with Pádraig Clancy and Noel Garvin. I think he pushed Garvin into the forwards, or they were rotating them or something, but top class, top quality midfielder, a brilliant fetcher. So Brendan Murphy was destroying Laois in the first half last week. I think it's something crazy like 15 possessions in the first 20 minutes. He was cleaning out Kevin Meaney, who's also back this year, who retired last year, and Brendan Quigley was brought on, and Quigley cleaned Murphy out in the air. Brendan Quigley is an old school fetcher. He's a fetcher. That's what he's best at, and he can get into the clouds. So he's been riddled with a groin injury and he can't get it right, so he's only actually playing on about 80% of his capacity. He needs another operation, but the 80% capacity, I think, you don't need 80%. That's for sprinting or for, maybe whatever. To get up in the air, he can jump off his other leg, and he's some man to jump. So he's a huge option for Laois, because arguably in Laois last year it was John O'Loughlin and Kieran Lillis, and they played every game, and that's good enough. That's a very strong midfield, but there was no other options in midfield. Quigley wasn't there and Kevin Meaney. Now they have 4. Most counties have 4. It's a bit like Premier League strikers now. You have your 4 that you rotate. You need that, and you need those options, because Brendan Murphy had cleaned Laois out in a league final in Croke Park last year, and Laois were kind of stuck. Do you know what I mean? They had if Quigley was there that day, they would have brought him on, they would have got it along to midfield, and Quigley would get you primary possession. So it's absolutely brilliant to have him back. I'm delighted, because he was half wondering whether to go back or whether to get the other operation, and then he's 35 next year and it's another year and one, you know what I mean? I think just patience got the better of him.
So he's not getting an operation before championship. He's going to
he's going to stay as he is now, and he's a huge competitor, Quigley. Like, I mean, he's a really, really good player, and you take him if he's not 100%. It's still the
only fear it might affect his mobility around a big place like Croke Park if he's in midfield. But as you said, like if he can dominate the air on 80%, well then especially.
And maybe that's 80% of not being able to play a full game. You know what I mean? So I'm not too sure what exactly he meant by that, but I think that I wouldn't last a full game. Maybe I'm 80%. I'm a 60.
He can give 100% for 50 minutes.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. So
you also don't want to be one of those midfielders who, when the keeper kicks it 5 yards to his right, he just stands there and says, "What are you doing? Kick it to me."
Do goalies, do midfielders do that?
You see the big ones like
that's like John Barnes back in the day.
Just put it up for me and I'll win it.
So that's it, lads. Predictions. Don't feel under too much pressure here, lads. I have said it's a 50-50 game. So Paddy Power have it at Laois 10 to 11, 11 to 10. So I see me and Paddy Power are usually on the same wavelength. I said even money both sides. So there you go. So we'll start with you, Connor.
It has to be Sucrue's Army, right? Laois all the way.
See, I gave you a lot of Mayo talking points at the start of today. Yeah. So there you go, Conan.
Yeah, I find it hard to back against Sugrue. I do like him, but I'm going to go with Westmeath. Just they've been scoring a lot, and they have those scores that can really do damage. So I fancy them.
Okay, so them to go straight back up. I was saying on Monday, Westmeath are a very, very unique team in that in the last 9 years I was reading, they've been relegated 4 times and promoted 3 times. Only 2 years did they stay the same. They're fans. We were calling them a mini Mayo. Like they're just on the road all the time in different places. I think Laois will win it. I'm not going to back definitely against Laois in a 50-50 game. Might back against them against Dublin or something like that. Then you always have the handicap to maybe give you some. I'm going to go for Laois. I think they're on the roll. To be honest with you, it's not the end of the world for either team if they lose it. They're up in Division 3, which is the main thing. But this is a final, and I know Laois celebrated the Division 4 final, even though I felt that little bit of embarrassment that maybe Chrissy McCaig did, because we've played Division 1 finals. And but Laois were out all in matching clothes later on that night, and the idea was we've won a national final and we're going to celebrate, and I think that's right. That's the way you should have done it. So Division 3 final would be a great one to win. It would be fantastic, next step up, and it would give you that little bit of confidence maybe going in, because it's nice to bring a cup home to your own town. And this is always my argument about this. A cup is a cup. I played junior soccer 2 years ago and we won a nobody cup in the middle of nowhere on a shitty boggy thing, and the cup was brought back to the town you know what I mean? A cup is a cup is a cup, and that's it. So like, I mean, the league is the same, right? So I'm going for Laois, and that's it. So we'll be back on Monday. We'll review that game, and don't get scared off. It won't be all about Laois and Westmeath. We'll do some other stuff as well, right? We'll talk to you then. Good luck.